And welcome back to the Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity. So, Lolly, let's talk a little bit, since your specialty is with leadership and executive coaches. What are in what you've seen with the clients you work with, what are the big challenges that really are facing leaders today?
So, interestingly enough, I think you're going to expect a different answer, but I'm going to give you what I see.
No, that's what I want, your perspective.
So most leaders are very interested in learning how to skills, processes, practices, best practices.
Right.
Every time I walk in, they say, well, we hired you because, we heard what you did for that company. And we want you to give us your processes and your best practices. They don't know what they're in for because I'm not that kind of gal.
So when they say that to you and you come in, what do you give them?
I say, I'm going to give you something that's going to change who you are. Is going to change your culture and is going to change your company. And in return, you will get what the other person got. You will get reaching the targets, and you will get success, and you will have more revenue. But that's not what I'm about. And most of them are disappointed.
Yeah, I can imagine the look on their face huh?
What did I get myself into? And then I have to always say, give me 6 months. If you don't like it, then I don't have to be here in 6 months. But most of my clients I've been with for 10 years and 15 years and 3 decades. So I guess there are good returns on what we do. And what I do is different is that most people, now I read a book a day, and I know that most of the books that are out there will give you the how, the what, the when. And Simon Sinek gave us even the why.
Oh, yeah, I love
But
Simon.
I found that we need to take it back to the core work. We need to go back to what it said to Aristotle and Buddha. We need to go back to philosophy. And what did they concentrate on? They concentrated on the who. It was who you were. That's very important because it's about your thoughts, it's about your beliefs, it's about your virtues. My company's called Lead From Within for a reason. It's because it starts with you.
Yeah, I always like to remind people that we're human beings, not human doings.
Right. And most of the books and most of the literature, most of school, every business school is about the doing. And I'm about the being. So that's very complicated, and people say that's a lot of work. I don't know if I want to do that. And the thing is, I say the awareness, first you have to have that awareness. When you have the awareness, then we can work on who. Once you work on who, we'll work on your virtues. And when we work on your virtues, because my 7 archetypes might be based on personas, but they're really based on virtues. And if you have those 7 virtues, think about it this way. If your virtue is candor and you're always speaking the truth, you don't come across as a deceiver. If your virtue is loyalty and serving others, you don't come across as self-serving. And if your virtue is integrity, then you don't come across as a destroyer who corrupts things or who comes across as cutting corners. So if I can teach a client of mine, a leader of mine, to come from virtues, high standards, then can you imagine how they change, how their culture changes, and how now they're doing better business, they're making better business deals, and the engagement in their business changes, their clients change because they don't tolerate people that are cutting corners. They don't tolerate things that they don't stand for. So that's why business changes when the leader changes from within.
Right. Do you find it, though, kind of common when you first get into an organization that the people you're working with are like, well, I just got to get the people in my department, or I just got to get my managers to get right, and then everything will be fine?
So there's a story that was cut out from the book that I was hired by the board of directors who said, you must work with this leader, and we give you 6 months to create him into a leader. And when I first showed up, I said, you don't really want to talk to me, do you? And he goes, no, why do I have to talk to you? Why are you talking to me? Go talk to my team. They're not trustworthy. They're not good at what they do. They don't have the skills. And I remember saying to him, you're right. You don't need me as a coach, and frankly, I don't want to work with you. And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, you don't really want my kind of work. You wouldn't like what I will bring you. And I left. But I got called 20 minutes later, and he said, I'm curious, what would you make me do? You know?
Very smart.
Yeah.
Very good. Using that psychology training, I see. So what are the 7 archetypes, just real quick, just so that my audience has them?
So it spells out rethink, which is an
Okay.
acronym for the 7 archetypes. R is for the rebel, who's confident. E is for the explorer who uses his or her intuition. T is for the truth teller who speaks with candor. H is for the hero that everything they do is with courage. I is for the inventor with integrity. N is for the navigator who's about being trusted. And K is not for the gender as much as for the characteristic and the virtue, and that's the knight who's loyal.
Right. Okay. Yeah, so knight or prince or princess, so we could say.
Right.
So that brings up an interesting point. Do you find that there's a big difference between women leaders and men leaders in the given environment these days?
Interestingly enough, my practice is 98% I coach men. I have found at the level that I coach, the women aren't women anymore. And my message is lead from within. Have your female power. Own your female power. And at a very high level, I have found that women are very masculine.
Yeah, I've
and
heard that many times.
it's a message that I don't subscribe to. And I am in control of who I want to coach or who I don't want to coach, even though someone says this woman needs you as a coach. But if I find that they're trying to be something that they're not, we won't synergize and we won't really work well together. But if I have someone who says, I don't realize that I'm acting masculine, but I really want to bring out my feminine power, then I can work with them. But if someone hires me and someone insists on being masculine when they're really feminine, I have a very hard time with them, because what you don't own owns you.
Do you find that some women who are in this position don't even realize how masculine they're being?
I think they've made an intentional choice to think that in order to survive, they have to be a certain way.
Yeah.
I usually sit at a boardroom meetings with I am the only woman, but I make a very intentional, conscious effort to remain feminine.
Wonderful, wonderful. No, it's really important, because it's the more we're comfortable owning who we are, then it's sort of, we also give permission to everyone else in the room to own who they are being.
Absolutely.
I'm just also wondering sort of generationally, because there's a lot of talk now about millennials and intergenerational management. Do you find that depending on sort of the makeup of an organization that you may have to adjust how you work with people if you're dealing with like a younger executive who's in a CEO position?
What a great question. And it's a very important question. And the answer is no.
Oh, okay.
Why? Because it's based on virtues. It's not based on age or gender. And we have to have these 7 virtues in order to lead from our greatness. Otherwise, we're leading from our gaps. I've spoken to universities, to 18-year-olds and 20-year-olds. They lap this up because they didn't learn that in school. They didn't get them with their MBA, that they need to lead from virtues. They got all the hows, but they didn't get the who.
Ooh, right. And it's so important. So it's great that like they're actually open to it. We talked a little bit before sort of about the shadow, right? About that part that we don't want to own. Why are people so resistant to kind of opening up to that side of themselves, have you found in your years of working with people?
People take their weaknesses, their shadows, their failures as something they should be ashamed of. We weren't born that way. It's not something that we come out of the womb and say, oh, wow, I failed at not maybe learning how to nurse. I'm a failure, right? That's not what happens. We are little babies and we're fine and we're open. But then it starts, maybe go to first grade and we're not the best reader. And a teacher says, what are you, stupid or something? They say something.
Or the other kids tease us.
Exactly. Or a kid teases you. Or you have a coach, a sports coach that says, oh, you don't belong on the team. Things start to
Or your parents even say, oh, well, you're not as smart as your brother or sister. Or, oh, look at your brother, how he got an A+ on his math class, something.
Okay, it's all of those and more. It's these little messages that we get that we internalize, and we feel shame, and we feel very vulnerable, that we start to keep secrets, these secrets that we hide from others. And when we keep secrets, those secrets, again, they tend to be like baggage. There's a story in the book, in the first chapter, about a CEO that prided himself on one of his virtues of being a truth teller. And I reveal something that happened in his life that he was carrying around when he was 18. When I started to coach him, he was 56. For all those years, he carried around baggage that happened to him when he was 18. And everybody in this company knew that something was off about him. The only thing is he didn't know. Okay. And once we revealed it to everybody, what he was carrying and why he was carrying it, all of a sudden people said, wow, now we can relate to you. Now we understand you. But while he was hiding something, they didn't want to work with him.
Right.
They avoided him. They wanted to leave the company. I got hired from the board of directors saying, we're losing our top talent. Get that man to be to be a CEO and, find out what's wrong with him. There was nothing wrong with him. He was holding on to a secret so tight and he thought no one saw it.
Wow. That's a huge lesson, right? That the things we think we're hiding so well, it really comes out in so many ways, and we're not even aware of it.
If you take the analogy of a balloon, right? If this is your whole life in a balloon and it's filled up with every experience or every memory, anything anybody has ever said to you, and on the left side is all the horrible things and the weaknesses and things you're ashamed of, and the right side is all the positive things. If you squeeze very hard because you want to hide the left side, what happens? It just ripples out. Yeah. So that's what our life is like. We can't hide. We can't squeeze it out. We can't mask it. We can't fake it till we make it. Right. It tends to show up anyway.
Right. Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. I've heard a lot of work, a lot of talk in sort of the more personal development side about embracing your shadow and doing shadow work and integrating the shadow. And you don't really hear it so much in sort of more the executive coaching kind of work. How do you kind of language things so that people are really open to it? Because while you and I both may appreciate Jung tremendously, most people don't.
Absolutely. So I have to be very careful of how I table things and use it in a container. I can't tell someone they're leading from their shadows when I first meet them. Right. The first thing that has to happen is trust. As we know in any relationship, it has to be about someone trusting you, but also having the awareness that something is off.
Right.
Because I get hired not by usually the CEO themselves. I get asked to come in. So I have to be able to cultivate a relationship where the person that I'm working with says, something is off, but I'm not sure what it is, and can you help me? When they ask for help, right? That's the difference between a navigator and a fixer. Right. It's one thing to say, this is what you need to do. There's another thing when you're asked, I need your help. What do you see that isn't working? Then we start the real work. And I might not call it shadows. Right. I ask the client themselves to name it what it is, and we use that so they can be comfortable with. I'm not here to label. I'm not here to put upon them what I think it is, because that's not about me. It's about them.
Right. So it's really like you're being brought in by the board or by somebody else because they observe an issue or a problem with the organization that they see needs to get fixed because of whatever reason, losing their best people or losing their clients, what have you. So when you're actually working with the person, they probably almost see you as a bit of a threat in some way. It's like, who are you? You got to come in and fix me or whatever. So you have to really build that rapport and really get them to see that you're on their side in order for them to really open up and be able to say, yeah, like I have these things I got to work on. Beautiful. Okay. Time for us, believe it or not, take our last break. See how fast the hour flies by? So when we come back, we're just going to wrap things up. We have some final thoughts, and we'll let you know how to get the book and where you can see Lolly in the future. So everybody, please stay tuned. You're listening to the Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, and we'll be right back.